Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining me. I'm happy to see this turnout. It's pretty impressive. Okay, let's get started. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Nico. I'm a .NET architect in Belgium for a consultancy company called Real Dolmen. I've been an MVP for 6 years now, focusing mostly on mobile development and Windows desktop development. I run a user group back in Belgium called Madden. We also focus on mobile development, but everything within the Microsoft stack. So if you're ever around, feel free to join us. I try to blog every once in a while, and this is my Twitter handle. If you ever want to reach me, that'll be the easiest way to do it. Okay, so what's today about? Today I'm going to be talking mostly about .NET Core 3 and especially what it brings to the table for desktop development. .NET Core before 3 was mostly focused on web development, and all of that changed with the release of 3. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about. What did it bring? So first of all, we got C# 8. Next to that, we got .NET Standard 2.1. And then we got something else that was new, something more that was new, and most importantly, support for desktop development. Now, Microsoft announced that WPF and WinForms are back in active development. And you could say, what? Why? This is all legacy stuff. This is as dead as it gets. Let me check how dead this really is. Who is actively working on WinForms projects today? Quite a few people. WPF? Even more people. And who is building a new product in either WPF or WinForms? Everyone else is doing legacy stuff. Okay, so not that yet. We've also come to the point where people are realizing that doing everything on the web is not the golden solution they promised us it would be. Desktop development still has its place, and a really important place as well. So this is why Microsoft puts WPF and WinForms back in active development. And myself personally, I couldn't be more happy about this. This is also the why. There are 2.4 million Visual Studio developers or developers that are using Visual Studio to build desktop applications. 2.4 million developers are making their income with desktop development on .NET. There are also over 900 million devices running Windows 10 currently. So upgrading WinForms and WPF to be more modern, to have the ability to use the Windows 10 APIs is a really important move for them. Now, what can you do with .NET Core 3? The promise of .NET Core was to be cross-platform, right? So we get ASP.NET Core on Windows, Linux, and some more stuff. This is not possible with desktop development. WinForms and WPF are really hooked into the Windows system APIs. So they can't just lift it out and make it cross-platform. So what they did instead is they created desktop packs. And the desktop packs are kind of like an extension on .NET Core. And you can add them as a reference, and then you get all the support for calling into the Windows APIs. By separating the desktop packs out of .NET Core, they still maintain the promised cross-platform philosophy that they had with .NET Core, while also giving us the possibility of diving into Windows itself. So what do we get with .NET Core 3? We get command line support to create WPF and WinForms applications. We get Saml Islands. Saml Islands is really impressive, and I have a demo of this later on. We actually get to use the modern UWP controls in WinForms or in WPF. We get high DPI support, finally. And we even get access to all the Windows 10 APIs. Like, for example, the Action Center. We can do push notifications in Windows 10 from WinForms or WPF. Also, we can write self-contained applications. We can ship the entire .NET Core framework with our application, eliminating the need for the framework to be installed on the machine where it runs on. Also giving us the possibility of running applications side by side using a different version of the framework. It has some downsides, but more about this later on. So what do you do with existing applications? Well, you can update them to .NET 4.8, and I would really advise this. This is the latest version of the network. The support story is unchanged, so it will be supported for the lifetime of Windows. And if you want to, you can port it over or upgrade it to .NET Core 3, which gives us the desktop pack, which gives us side-by-side support and even self-contained executables. If you do the self-contained application, then you get a lot of files. You get your application with all its DLLs, and you also get all the DLLs of the .NET Core framework. That's a lot of stuff to ship. By creating a self-contained executable, you get all these files in one single exe. It's basically a zip file. So once you open it, you double-click it, it unzips everything in a temporary folder, and your application starts. The launch time does increase a bit, but it's still maintainable, depending on the size of your app, of course. So what's coming next? You've probably all heard about this, but in around November this year, I believe, they will ship the next version of .NET, which will just be called .NET 5. And .NET 5 is actually the merging of the different versionings. They have .NET 4.8, they have .NET Core 3, and they no longer want to maintain both side by side. So .NET ends at 4.8 and .NET Core evolves to .NET 5. .NET 5 will continue the merging of all the frameworks. So from this moment on, also Mono will be known as .NET, for example. Okay, let's start with some demos. This is big enough for everyone to read? Yeah. Okay, so I mentioned the command line. I can show you the version I'm running of .NET. I'm on 3.1 preview. This is because I have Visual Studio Preview installed, which I'll be using for my demos, so dragons may appear. Let's start with .NET New WinForms. And the output folder or the output project will be WinForms demo. .NET is now choosing the correct template. It's creating my project for me, and there we go. From here on, I can first go into the folder, and I can do a compile. It detects the project file in the folder, and it's starting to compile it now using my .NET Core version, build succeeded, and I can run it. Here we go. This is my beautiful WinForms application, created, compiled, run completely from command line. I can, of course, do the exact same thing for WPF. And then we'll go into the folder. This is what I get. I can double-click the project file and it will open in Visual Studio. Now, you get exactly what you expect from a WPF project. You get your app.xaml with all your startup in it. You get your main window. You get your code behind. And you even get a visual editor. Now, the XAML editor, and I do mean the visual one, is a new one. So it's still in development. Features are missing compared to the full designer. But it's getting better and better. A couple of months ago, we couldn't even do data binding from the designer yet. That's in there now. So you have your toolbox. You can drag and drop stuff on the designer surface. Go. You have your properties window. And the data binding is gone again. Anyway, so you get a designer. Might be that this works better in the preview version. Yeah, this stays grayed out. So oh, there it is. The option was there a few months ago, but it was grayed out completely to create data binding. So you weren't able to do it. You've all seen that Visual Studio updates very regularly. This is some of the new stuff that gets in there. Okay. Let's move on. So where are we at right now? .NET Core 3.0 was released end of September last year. They moved really quickly to a .1 release in November, and this is the long-term supported one. This is the one you want to be using if you're doing .NET Core 3 stuff. It will get supported for about 2 or 3 years, I think. We will get .NET 5 in November. And from that moment on, they will have 2 .NET releases, or they will release .NET on a regular basis, always switching a normal release with an LTS release. I have a timeline in the next slide. We have the Saml designer. That one is working pretty well. The WinForms designer, that one's another story. And I will show it to you in a few minutes. Talking about WinForms, a bunch of stuff is gone. And this was a really interesting one because this is a breaking change between 3.0 and 3.1. All of these controls are gone, no longer in the framework. There are replacements here. Now, these are really old controls. They've been deprecated since .NET 2 and been replaced by this one. So instead of keeping it in a deprecated way, they just threw it out with the old. So this is something really important to keep in mind, especially if you're porting over really old legacy applications. You might run into one of these. This is a timeline of .NET Core releases. So we're currently here. .NET 5 is coming. November 2021, they have .NET 6, which is a long-term supported release. Next year is a general release. So the thing that they're going for is the even numbered ones are the long-term releases. The odd numbered ones are the not so long supported releases. So it's always safest to go for the LTS version if you're building a new project. Now let's say you have a project, a WinForms application that you want to port over to .NET Core 3. What do you need to do? One of the first things you can do is run the portability analyzer. This is a plugin for Visual Studio. It will generate an Excel report saying what namespaces, classes in your project is not compatible with .NET Core 3. So it will give you an overview of where you'll have some work, some refactoring to do, or maybe not. You need to upgrade away from package config to package reference. And then it's safest to go to .NET 4.8 first, and then from that moment on, go to .NET Core. Afterwards, you can migrate your libraries if you want to. Then you can start migrating your app, and then of course you need to test it. This is a really important step because migrating your application is easy, and it might work on the first try. It might compile and it might run without any problems, but there are minor differences between full.NET and .NET Core. So you need to test your app end to end. Every single flow that's in the application, every single functionality you have in there needs to be tested. And this is probably the most expensive step of the entire porting process, but also the most important one. Now there's an unsupported tool on GitHub, on the official .NET GitHub, that, what's in the name, tries to convert your application. It's completely unsupported by Microsoft. Someone built it as a demo for a conference, I think, and they just threw it online. It did not work for my demo when I tried it a couple of months ago. It is updated since then, so I might have to try it again. But feel free to take it for a spin, but your mileage may vary. All the documentation about porting is on this link, which basically shows the exact same list I have here because I copy pasted it. I will show it like this then. So thank you. So I'm going to port over an, how old is that? I think it's about 8 years old, the application. It's built in .NET 4.0. And what it does, it's a small tool that I've built with some colleagues to generate post-it images. We had a great post-it war back in 2011 between the Java teams and the .NET teams. And they couldn't figure out how we made all these great images, but we just built a tool for it. So that was the only WinForms application I had available that I could use to port. Let me show it to you first. So this is Pixelator. You can browse to an image, let's say Super Mario, and it pixelates it completely and even shows you how many post-its you need for each color. So it did what it needed to do. Okay, let me start off by showing you something first. I've added an extra form to this, showing the web control. Now, a lot of WinForms applications out there have a web control in them to show some information. So this form has the original built-in WebView control. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is html5test.com, open in the WebView control, and it shows me that I'm running IE 11 on Windows 8, which is obviously not true. But that's just because it's that old. It is an IE 11 control, but it got the Windows version wrong. So to fix this, I can use Saml Islands. Saml Islands, I've told you this, gives you the ability to take UWP controls, the modern Windows 10 controls, and use those in WinForms or WPF. So we're going that route. Now, first of all, I'm going to start by upgrading my .NET version, which is .NET Framework 4 client profile, to 4.8. Now, interesting little thing I discovered yesterday actually is I upgraded to 4.8. If I go to the properties of my solution, every once in a while, it deselects building the application itself. It didn't now, but it did it every time yesterday. So this is very random. Let's compile. That works. Okay. Now I'm going to add a NuGet package from the Microsoft Toolkit. The thing about Saml Islands is it's kind of involved to get the UWP control in there. It takes kind of a lot of work. The good people of the Windows Toolkit, Community Toolkit, they've decided to also build a WinForms or WPF version and take those controls and prepare everything for us. So the only thing I need to do now to use the modern WebView control is add this NuGet package. Everything will be done for me, and I will just be able to use the control. There we go. So that's installed. This is the form. So this is the old WebView control. We throw it out. I might need to compile first. It now says I have to use package reference. This is because I updated to .NET 4.8, which no longer supports packages config. Now upgrading is easy. I can right-click my references, and there's an option to migrate packages config to package reference. Click OK. It's uninstalling all the packages from packages config. It's reinstalling them as package references, and it can show me an HTML report of what it's done, but that's not important now. Let's build again. Build succeeded. Now I can throw the HTML or the web view out, go to the toolbox, and here is my brand new web view control coming from the web view toolkit. Huh. There we go. To the code behind, of course, the web view control is no longer there. I have a web view 1 now, .source. The app still builds. Let me check if it's still selected. It is. Awesome. So if I take the web demo now, it shows the exact same page, but now I'm using Edge 18 on Windows 10. So I'm using a UWP control in an old WinForms full.NET application. Now this is the web view control that's in UWP now, so it's using Edge. Not the Chromium Edge, but the classic one. They are working on WebView 2, which is in preview right now, but only for C++ projects. But it's coming to .NET soon. You can look at GitHub. It's open source. It's all there. There is some documentation here on the Microsoft Docs website. So on controls for WPF and WinForms, there's an whole part about the WebView, and they even mention WebView 2 that's coming soon. So currently WebView is marked as deprecated in the toolkit. It's still usable, but it's the old Edge control. You need to keep this in mind. But the new one is coming soon. That's a Chromium-based one, yeah. Not this one, but the new one, yeah. This is the browser, by the way. That one works. Okay. Next, let's take a look at the portability analyzer. So if I right-click my solution, or my project, sorry, I have an option somewhere. Where is it on the solution? I don't have it installed on the preview, probably. Let me quickly open the solution on the stable version of Visual Studio. So this is just the portability analyzer I'm going to show. Like I've mentioned, it takes a look at your entire project, generates an Excel file, and it even shows you what version of .NET Core you're compatible with. What we should get is the Excel showing us that we're compatible with .NET Core 3, but not with the older versions. As soon as it's done loading, here it is, Analyze Project Portability. It's analyzing. Shouldn't take too long. Here we go. So we can open the report. As you can see, I've done this a few times. Here we are. So my application is 100% compatible with .NET Core plus platform dependencies, platform extensions. Only 38% compatible with .NET Core without the extensions, and about 51% with .NET Standard. What's the other, what's the missing percentages? All the WinForms DLLs. They're not in .NET Standard, so it's not compatible. They are all in the platform extensions. If you go to the details, you can see for every namespace that's in there, for every class that's in there, you can see if it's supported or not. So this does look good for me. Now I need to port it. And how do you get from a .NET 4.8 application to a .NET Core application? That's actually pretty easy. If I go back to the project I created using my command line, I copy the CSproj file. I go to my pixelator, this one, paste it in, rename it. I'm not throwing away the old one, I'm just renaming it. Like this. Let me take the preview again. Close this one. So if I take a look at the properties now, I'm on .NET Core 3.1. My application is migrated. Well, I started anyway. So it's as easy as that. You just copy over the project file. Of course, since I'm using package reference, which means that all my NuGet package references are in the project file, and I just replaced it, I'll need to re-add my WebView package. Okay, so that's it. Another thing, there's a client library in here called for logging purposes. I lost that reference as well, of course, so I need to re-add that one. There we go. Let's try to compile it. Now it mentions that I have some duplicate attributes. That's because of the assembly info file that's here. All of that information is now also in the project file, so I no longer need this one. I can just throw it out and build it again. And now it's succeeded. Let's see if it runs. Here it is again. Still works. So I've successfully ported my application over to .NET Core. Interesting part here is this library. If I look at the properties, it's still on .NET 4 client profile. But I used this code, I referenced it from my .NET Core project, and it works. This also means that if you're using third-party packages like Telerik controls or some of the other vendors, there is a very big possibility that they will just continue working, even though they are compiled for full .NET Framework and you're on .NET Core. It might just work. But of course, you need to test it. Okay, now let's say that I want to port over my client library to .NET Standard. It's the exact same thing. I have a .NET Standard project file ready here. I go to my logging, paste it. Let's just override it. Reload the entire thing. I'm on .NET Standard 2.0. If I compile, I will once again get the duplicate errors. So I need to throw out the assembly info here as well. It compiles and it runs. Let's try the web demo again. That's still working with the NuGet package that we re-added. Now, there's one feature in here, the About feature. What this does is it opens the browser, the default browser of the system, to the GitHub page where this project is hosted. So it's just a simple process.start. If I click it, it crashes. This is one of the minor differences between full.NET and .NET Core. This does not work like this anymore. It is a simple solution. I need to create a new process start info. Command IntelliSense. There we go. With a file name set to the URL and use shell execute through. And I pass that in as a parameter. Let's try this again. Now it works. So that's one of those small things that they have changed that you need to be careful for. This is the reason I tell you that you need to test your entire application end to end, full testing. Okay, let's go back to the slides for a moment. Let's skip the broken slides. There we go. So when do you need to migrate? The official documentation says that if you're on WPF and your application is actively being developed, so you're not just in maintenance mode fixing critical bugs, but you're actually developing new features, then it might be interesting to see how easy you can port it over. Run the analyzer and have a look at it. Maybe a small warning first. Visual Basic is not supported at the moment. So I don't know who's doing their old or WinForms projects in Visual Basic. Anyone? Yeah, you'll not be able to port to .NET Core for now. I do believe that support is coming. I'm not sure, but you'll have to wait. So if your application is in a pure maintenance mode, you can upgrade to 4.8 to enjoy longer support. But it might not be worth the effort of porting to .NET Core. If you're on WinForms and you are dependent on the visual editor, you might want to stay on .NET a bit longer. And I will show you this. There is a workaround, switching to Rider, which is interesting by itself. So the WinForms designer, the visual designer, is here, but in a preview version. And it is improving. The last time I gave this session a couple of months ago, this page would crash in the designer. It would simply not show. So they've improved it, but as you can see, there are a few controls, the slider and the menu toolbar, with a big red cross over it. That means that those controls are not supported by the designer yet. These are all, by the way, built-in default controls. If you hover over it, I don't know if you can read it, crossed out controls are not yet supported in the designer preview. Okay, interesting. Now let's move over to Rider for a second. You all know Rider? It's JetBrains' competitor for Visual Studio. It's like IntelliJ, but for .NET. If I open the same form, probably need to reload the project first. So this is the same solution that I've opened here. Okay, that just restarted. Just going to let it load for a while. So they've built Rider as a competitor for Visual Studio, and they're constantly adding support for new project types. And a while ago, they added support for WinForms, and they are using the built-in Visual Studio editor in Rider. But apparently, they're doing a better job because it has full .NET Core support. So let's see if I can build here. Okay, build succeeded. Can you show me the designer, please? So here's the toolbox, here's the designer, no crossed out controls, everything is working. So if you are dependent on the designer, which basically every WinForms developer is dependent on, we're not going to do this in code, then Rider might be an option for you if you want to switch to .NET Core. Or if you have some time, some patience, you can wait for Microsoft to actually get this to work as well. Now, App distribution. Here are a few options of distributing desktop applications on Windows. Who has used one of these? Yeah, almost everyone. All of these are now replaced by MSIX. MSIX is a new packaging format from Microsoft, and this should be the one installer to rule them all. What does it give us? It promises to get rid of machine rot. We've all been there, right? Installing applications, uninstalling applications, PC gets slow, we need to reinstall Windows to get it to perform again. We've all been there, right? That should be gone, as long as you only use MSIX to install applications. And how did they do this? Everything you install with MSIX gets virtualized or containerized. They have a virtual registry that your application can use to write its registry keys to. You have a virtual file system kind of thing that gets completely removed on uninstall. But we also get differential updates. So if you ship your application, you deliver an update to it, it will only download the diff, not a complete application again. And we can also do automatic updates. So you have your MSIX. How are you going to distribute it? Again, several options. You can push it to the Windows Store or the Windows Store for Business. You can even use a file share or a simple HTTPS endpoint. You can basically put it everywhere. Let me show you how that works. So we once again go back to Pixelator. We want to package this and distribute it. To create an MSIX package, I need to add a new project to the solution, a Windows Application Packaging project. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind, before you see this template, you need to install the UWP workload in Visual Studio. So we add the project, give it a meaningful name. And here is where UWP shows up. It wants a target version, a minimum version. This is all okay. It's creating the template. Now what's in here? Let's see if I can zoom in a bit. That works? Okay. We get an images folder, which is where you can put your splash screen, your icons and everything. All of that goes there. There's a manifest that you can use to set some capabilities, but the most important thing is the applications. Right click, we add a reference to our WinForms project. Click OK. And now it's there. Okay. Build the application now. And once it's done compiling, we can start generating the package. There we go. Right click the packaging project, choose a publish option, create app package. So how are we going to distribute this? We can create a package to upload to the Microsoft Store, or we can create one for side loading with automatic updates enabled. If you really want to start distributing your app, you'll need to create or select a certificate and make sure that your application is signed. I'm just going to skip this step for now. Okay, I'll just skip the zooming in for now. So we can version our application here. We can select CPU architecture. We can select the configuration, debug or release, and so on. Next, it wants to know where this application will be installed from, the source. We can give it a network path or an HTTPS endpoint, anything we want. My awesome share. And then how often should the installer check for updates? We can do this every time the application runs, which gives us kind of the same flexibility as we got from WPF run once or click once applications. Or we can select a time frame every day, every hour, every week or so. And then when we click create, the package is getting created. It takes your application, generates the executable, puts it in the package and everything. I'm not going to do this now because I've already done it. And it should be right here. So this is the output that you get. You get an HTML file, you get a folder and an app installer. The HTML file, I will show you this in a minute, but basically you can take this output and put it on a web server. This is the most interesting thing. You have an MSIX bundle file here, and you can open this using any zip kind of program. And in there is the actual MSIX file, which contains your application and all the .NET Core DLLs that you need to run it. So this is completely self-contained. Now you can push all of this to, for example, Azure. And this is the HTML file that you get. So I've published this to an app service on Azure, which is an HTTPS endpoint. I can click Get the App. And this will open the app installer and allow me to download the application and install it on my machine. It's already installed, so I'm not going to do this again, but it's here in my Start menu. I can open it up and I get my application. It just checked for an update. There's no updated version, so it runs. This is the HTML file that you get in the output. You can modify this just the way you want. You can put in the branding of the company you work for. You can give it an icon, a nice description. You can basically build your own business store this way. Now we've created an MSIX, and this one only works on Windows 10. But let's face it, we're not all on Windows 10 these days. There's also something called MSIX Core, which is a version of MSIX, which is compatible from Windows 7 Service Pack 1 up all the way to Windows 10. So that includes Windows 8.0, 8.1, and you can use this MSIX installer on those versions of Windows. Now you won't get the containerized virtualization, no machine rots kind of thing. You won't get that because the operating system doesn't support it. But you do get the ability to create one MSIX file that will install from Windows 7 onwards to Windows 10, which is very interesting in itself. Also, your application does not need to be a .NET Core application. You can use this for VB6 if you want. Basically everything, every type of application you can put in MSIX and you can ship it using this, which makes it a really interesting tool. So, putting everything together, desktop development is really here to stay. It's back in business, it's back in active development. I even heard some stuff on the Java side of things that they're also putting work in desktop development again. So it's coming back. It's all about .NET Core going forward. .NET Core, which is to be renamed to .NET 5, really important step in this. Starting a new project, desktop project, go for .NET Core 3. You're working on an existing application, it's in active development, try to see if you can migrate to .NET Core. I'll take questions after this, if that's okay. Try to see if you can migrate it, but make sure that it's worth it, because if you need to rewrite half your application, it might get too expensive. Trying to distribute your application, take MSIX. It has a lot of advantages. Some resources. The first link is a blog by Microsoft that announces .NET Core 3 and all the support that it brings to desktop applications. The second one is the Microsoft documentation that shows everything that's new and how to use it. And this link is the blog of Oren Novotny, an MVP from New York, who helped me put this talk together. So as a thank you to him, I'll link to his blog. That was it for me. If you have any questions, feel free. And you can always come talk to me afterwards. There was a question in the back. Yes. Mm-hmm. How does a new packaging format work with other browsers? Um, there is no browser thing involved. The HTML file that you get is just a way of downloading the package to your PC. It's basically the application server, the web server that handles the pushing of updates. I see. So the installing of the application is not the browser. So the question was about how can the browser get enough rights to install a containerized application. The only thing the browser does is downloading the MSIX file, and then it boots up the app installer, which is a part of the operating system, and that one has enough rights to do everything. So that's how it works. Okay, any other questions? Yeah. You can wait for .NET 5. It's also .NET Core. So why would you want to start porting now? Because if you do it now, then it might be easier to go to .NET 5. And there is a long-term support release now with 3.1. So you can choose to go that route and port to 3.1 or wait for .NET 5. But no, .NET 5 is not an LTS release. .NET 6 will be one. Yes, the tooling will continue to improve. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for your attention.